Alright, in this video we want to talk, now that we've talked about what a function is, we want to talk about how to do something called evaluate a function. And evaluating is basically a kind of a fancy way of saying find the value of. Okay, so here's something that you might be used to seeing. You might be used to seeing an equation written like this. Let's say y equals 4x. And if you want to write it in what's called function notation, you replace the y with what you see right there. You replace it with f of x. And f stands for function. So function just means, or f of x just means, I should say, that y is a function of whatever I plug in for x. You might be familiar from science with the terms independent and dependent variable. X is the independent variable. I control what gets plugged in for x, and y depends on that. So a real simple example, let's look at this one right here. f of 2 means it's essentially a fancy way, or a shorter way of saying plug in 2 wherever I see an x. So the way that I like to do this is rewrite that original function, and where there used to be an x, right here. This is telling me now plug in 2 right there. And 4 times 2, that's equal to 8, so that's what f of 2 equals. Okay, that's all that it means. So f of 7 means wherever you see an x, you would plug in a 7, and 4 times 7 is 28. Okay, if it said f of watermelon, let's say, of course that's not a number, but just to give you an example, f of watermelon means wherever you see an x, you would plug in a watermelon. WM stands for watermelon, right? 4 times watermelon, of course that's not a number, but hopefully you get the idea. So x stands for, this should say input right here. X stands for the input, and f of x stands for the output, whatever you get out after you plug in the x value. So let's try each of these. We'll do the first one together, and I encourage you to pause the video and try numbers 1 through 4 on your own. So this one right here, f of 9, means the following. F of 9 means wherever I see, in this case we're not using x, we're using the variable n, but it doesn't matter what variable we use. I'm going to rewrite that original function, leaving a space where there used to be an n. F of 9 means wherever I see an n, and I see an n right there, I am now going to plug in a 9 right there. So we'll just drop the 9 in. So negative times 9 would be negative 9 plus 1, and that equals negative 8. And that's all you have to do. We just found f of 9. So don't be confused by the f. F is not a variable. We're not trying to solve for f. This is not an equation. F of 9 is just another way of saying this. It's another way of saying plug in 9 for n, or plug in 9 wherever you see an n. So if you haven't already, try to pause and see if you can do numbers 2, 3, and 4 on your own. Alright, so let's rewrite g of n. G of n is this function right here, and once again I'm leaving a big space where there used to be an n, and in that big space this is telling me g of negative 7. So wherever there used to be an n, plug in negative 7. Okay, now we have to follow the order of operation. So parentheses, exponents comes first. So negative 7 squared will be 49, and we still have that negative outside. Okay, then negative times 49 is negative 49, plus the 1 would be negative 48, and that's our answer right there. We just evaluated g of negative 7. Alright, by the way, just one thing to clarify, you could have multiple places with that. So suppose it had been this instead. Suppose it was g of n equals negative n squared plus n. And again, you wanted to find g of negative 7. You would do the same thing. You would do negative 7 squared, and then this n is also going to be negative 7. So this one would still be negative 49. That negative 7 would be there, and then you would get negative 56. I just want to clarify, you could plug it in multiple places if they had given you an original one that had more than one n. Alright, let's try number 3 and 4. So number 3, same thing. We will rewrite this function, h of x. This is an absolute value function this time, and there used to be an x in that absolute value. I'm going to leave a space, and this is telling me in that space where that x used to go, there should be a negative 1 right now. So what is this going to be? So negative 3 times negative 1 is positive 3. The absolute value of positive 3 is just 3, and negative 3 times 3 is negative 9, minus that 3 outside would be negative 12, and that's our answer. Okay, you don't only have to plug in numbers to these, you can also plug in expressions with variables in it. So that will be our last example, f of t right here. So I'm going to replace this where there used to be a t. There was a t right here. Where there used to be a t, I'll leave a parentheses. And this is telling me the following. It's telling me where there used to be a t, now plug in not just a number, plug in that whole thing, plug in x plus 3. So let's do that. So we have negative 3 times 5 to the x plus 3 plus that 1. And the only thing we can simplify there, we're not going to get a number out of this. We're just going to get x plus 3 plus 1 would be x plus 4. That's as simple as we can make it right there. We can't multiply those two together because this is being raised to an exponent. Exponents comes first. So that is how you evaluate functions. I hope it makes some sense.